Hey everyone. Sorry about that. I'm a little late. I had some trouble getting away from the kids today. All right. So let me just see who's here. And I'm going to give people a few minutes to get here while I take some attendance. All right, so Anne is here. Abby. I don't see Abby. Or not yet. How about Cicely? Yep. Kiari is here. Maya is here. Alicia. There you are. Ross is here. Megan? Nope. Adriana is here. Liam is here. Taylor is here. Soleil is here. But Sydney. Nope, no Sydney. Ashley is here. Jenna is here. Katie? Darian is here. Michael is here. Jake is here. Okay. So today, Maya is gonna start us off with a presentation, and then we're gonna talk about the family.
Do I just press share screen?
Yes, there.
Okay. I don't know if
So you should be co-host now. And be able to share screen. There should be a button at the bottom that says share screen.
Okay. All right, my laptop's making me do this whole thing. Hold on. All right, I'm gonna figure this out. Hold on.
Take your time. I was just gonna go grab my caffeine. I forgot it.
Whoa, you're chaotic. That's smiley. That's smiley face.
Okay, sounds good, Ashley. Just got your message. Sounds good. Yay.
Okay, so I did mine on the family. I don't know if I should. Okay. Can everybody like see me and hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. So first I'm just gonna start off with like the definition of a family. So like the nuclear family, or the it's like the North American family, is defined as a working father who is the breadwinner of the household. Um, then the mother, who's like the caretaker of the home, the father and the children, and then like their biological children. That's like what the nuclear family is. So nuclear families basically like exclude other types of families. So that would be like single parent households, or like gay or lesbian like relationships that or marriages that adopt children. And then you have like parents who are incarcerated and all that stuff and still have like children who are like dependent on them and things like that. And so the majority of families in the United States don't really even fit the nuclear family definition. You have like all these different types of families, and they're all different. And yeah, that's what society deems as like the normal family, but it's in fact not normal because it's not the majority. So feminism is one of the articles that we had to read. It talked about like the rise of feminism that was cultivated in the 1960s, and it basically like brought attention to the way working women were defined in society. Basically, it was just fighting for women to be seen and to be like as more than just like caretakers, or women that worked, but just like workers that were women, and like the difference between the two. And this article actually brought attention to like Black feminism, and a lot of Black feminists brought into attention the fact that you can't talk about feminism as just men and women being equal, because not all men are equal. So you also have to take into consideration the fact that there's classism, there's racism and homophobia. So like, you know, there's not just like one man. You have like white men, and then you have, you know, like Black men and gay men and all the intersectionalities that are included there. And how like, you know, women cannot like compare to just like one man, and you have to think about like all the different aspects of it all. And yeah, like feminism, basically like all those movements that were created, they were not just specifically for just like bringing attention to how women should be equal, because that's very broad and very general. It specifically like honed in on working women, and how like in the 60s, when a lot of Black men were went off to work or to go fight in like the Vietnam War, like a lot of women were took those jobs in like factories and things like that, to take the place of the men that were gone, and basically they were fighting and all that stuff, and women had like this different role now. So they were more than just caretakers and more than just like mothers, but they were also like full-time workers. They were full-time breadwinners. And how like when men, Black men who were not only fighting in the Vietnam War, but they were only fighting in like segregated parts of the war, because, you know, that whole thing with segregation. And like men came back from the war and were basically like war heroes. And then they came back to their homes where they were still treated like, you know, less than because they were Black men. And then you had women who were in this long period of working and basically like taking like control of their lives and kind of being the breadwinners. And then the men came back and they have to go back to like this regular way of life, which was obviously like not very possible and really difficult. Yeah. And then there was another article, well, it was like a cartoon kind of that like talked about the mental load. So basically the mental load, kind of, this whole cartoon highlighted how women often take on like a managerial role in the home. And that means like telling their children what to do and telling their husbands where they need things and what to cook and clean and when to do this and that. And basically it just talked about how like the mental load is not something that like women take on willingly, and rather it naturally like occurs. So the mental load is like when women have like all of these different things that they're thinking about in their mind that they feel like they need to do. And it's like, it can be compared to like how like a student thinks, how you are like going about like your everyday life as a student, but you like in the back of your mind, you know, you have like a bunch of things that you have to get done. You have a bunch of assignments that you have to complete. And that's something that you're constantly thinking about. And like, that's basically like the life of a student. And in the same way, women who like have a home and who like basically run a household have this thing where if it's say like, you know, the wow, I can't say the word, nuclear family. So the men are like, you know, the main breadwinners and they work all day. So that means that the wife is at home taking care of the children and, you know, cleaning and cooking and everything you can think of. And then the husband comes home and they basically like don't really help out at all. And women have to like ask their husbands to, you know, like clean the dishes and do the laundry and all that stuff. It's like taking on a managerial role. So having to like give orders and things like that. And basically it like, this whole like cartoon like illustrates like the way in which women really like have a job that they have to do when they're like full-time, you know, moms and they're taking care of homes and stuff like that, how it really is a job and that's basically unpaid. And they compared it to like when you're a manager at work, how it can be difficult to be a manager and like to manage people but also work at the same time. So like assigning things to people but also participating in the things that you're assigning, that's kind of like the way that they compared it, is that like women are like basically like managing their homes but at the same times like they're working in their homes. That's kind of like the way that they compared it. Yeah. So, and then I just wanted to talk about like motherhood in general and how basically motherhood is an unpaid job. And in one of the articles we had to read, The Price of Motherhood, it talks about how the woman that writes the article talks about how when she wasn't a mother, when she was unmarried and didn't have children, and the way that she viewed the stay-at-home mom, and how she was saying that like when I had a job that you know, was like working for an article or something like that, I would often look at stay-at-home moms and look at like women who basically just like took care of their kids all day and would say like, oh, this is setting the gender back. Like, why are they not making something of themselves? Why are they not being more active in their lives, and why are they not doing more for themselves? And how she was like, basically like, I took motherhood like completely out of context is what she was saying. And how now like that she is a mother and she would be around like friends who didn't have children, and how they would have the same opinions, and how it was really difficult. She was saying how like if you don't have a child, if you're not like a mother, if you don't take care of like a home, like it's really difficult to kind of see it and like have the proper perspective on it. And one of the quotes that I kind of took from the article was how like female caregiving is utterly taken for granted, and how a lot of times when you're outside of that position, when you're not a mother, when you're not a wife, you don't see like the difficulties and how it really is a job. And this woman like illustrated like in like a day for her as a stay-at-home mom would be like dropping her kid off at school, and like, or even before that, like getting her kid dressed in the morning and feeding them and dropping them off for school, and then paying bills and cleaning and cooking and having to like, you know, talk to the plumber or something like that, like taking care of utilities and stuff like that, and then having to go and pick up their kid and bring them back home, or like bring them to like after school activities, and then having to go home at night and cook and clean and care and all that stuff, and how like literally it's a full day's work. But like even the name itself, like stay at home, like it kind of gives like this kind of like idea of luxury, and how it's like, oh, you know, when you sit at home all day and you like have this idea of like somebody just like chilling on the couch like watching movies or something like that, and how like that's not at all what motherhood and being a stay-at-home mom really is. And then you have like the other side of it, which is women who are expected to balance motherhood but also a career. And it illustrated like the story of a woman who had like a problem child, and she was working like part-time, and she you know, had like this father of the child had more than enough money to give to her so that she could send her kid to like a better school so that he could have a better education and start like having, you know, better behavioral issues and like, well, better, you know, behavior and all that stuff. And how it was very clear that like once he got sent to that new school that his behavior changed, and once she changed like how much she was working, and how she was able to like, you know, spend more time with her family and stuff like that, like her kids started to improve in a lot of ways. And when she took her husband to court to ask him for like the money that he clearly had, the judge, instead of focusing on how that father could provide like, you know, more money for the child, he more focused on the fact that like the mother like had the opportunity to stay at home and all this stuff, and she wasn't working full hours, and how it was like, oh, well, you're not making as much money, you could be making more money basically. And not paying attention to the fact that like not only was she taking off work to like care for her child, but like it was like, you know, clearly the father had the capability of, you know, supplying what that child needed for a better education and for better surroundings. And it just kind of illustrates like how a lot of times when you look at you know, the life of a child, and you see that like really the mother is that main or primary like primary caregiver, is the main influence of that child, and yet they still have to balance like motherhood and making money at the same time, but also like influencing their child's life and all that stuff. And you see how it's like it's almost impossible to balance, and it's really hard to balance with ease, you could say, because it's literally like having 3 different jobs at once. And that's like one of the biggest issues with our society today is how like the article says, like, female caregiving is basically like taken for granted, because it's not like appreciated enough, like what women do for their families and how it really is a job. So just like some of the questions I have for you guys. So how must society change their expectations for working mothers? Anybody can answer.
So right off the bat, I think society needs to view working mothers as a job. There has to be some sort of compensation for staying home. The whole problem with that is it have to be regulated by the government just to get any compensation, because there's the few people that will exploit the system, but it's just how it is. And unfortunately, nobody wants to take that on because they don't want their reputation riding on that, and it's sort of sad.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything else to add?
I think expectations just need to be lowered for working mothers. Just appreciated more, I guess, too.
Yeah. I would say that like it's really hard when you talk about like society as a whole, because it's like, you know, we have views in society today that have been there for hundreds of years, and how like, you know, progression is really difficult a lot of times. And so, yeah, I agree with Michael about how like change would be really difficult, especially if we're talking about like compensation, and like the government getting involved in like trying to like regulate jobs and stuff like that. Like a lot of people would see that as like too much work, and kind of just like leaving it as it is. And yeah. For the second question, do you believe that the mental load is something that can be like eliminated in the context of the modern family? So like what I mean by that is like understanding what the mental load is and seeing how a lot of like stay-at-home moms or just like working moms deal with like this managerial kind of position in their homes. So having to instruct their husbands to get things done, rather than like husbands seeing that like seeing like running a household or seeing parenthood as something that they are, it's like 50-50, you know what I mean? So do you believe that that is something like that mindset is something that of the like the mental load of women having to take on everything, do you think that's something that can be eliminated?
I think it could be eliminated. This comes with the fact that it comes from really comes from the background of the both parents, because some parents just really don't understand that theory. So I think it comes to communication. Just most people understanding like the workload that a mother has to do, what exactly you have to do as a man to or a woman to help out and do what you got to do in the relationship.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think the whole point of it, like he had just said, is the expectations. It's good to have expectations for each other, especially in a relationship, and I think that's what drives communication, is being able to sit down and talk and say, all right, this is what we expect of each other, and this is how we can accomplish it, and making it not just, all right, I expect this of you because I go to work this many days a week, and it doesn't have to be a competition. It just has to be understood by both parts of the relationship.
I also feel like part of it too is like education, like this type of class starting from like a younger age. The more people become like aware of just like not just like general like gender studies and like more like equal opportunity, then they'll have a better understanding and like, sorry, my family just came in, but a greater understanding for how to like balance it out as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the last question was kind of just like me wanting to hear you guys' opinions and just kind of like we could talk about it. It was, how was your perception of your mother, or like whoever your primary caretaker was, how has your perception of them like changed over time, or just from like what you've learned like from this class? Like how has your perception of like what they do been affected?
Well, for me, I sort of realized not from this class, just overall, that it was taking care of like the kids and like working at the same time was pretty impressive, and so I was super grateful for it, and that just happened sort of more over time rather than just through the class.
I think like over time you definitely get like more respect and like see how much like actually goes into it all, because like when you're little you kind of just don't know what's going on, but then I feel like you reach like a certain point in your life and you start to like realize, and then as that like goes on you kind of just continue to realize more and more like how much actually goes into it and kind of like how much work it actually is to do it all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just at the start you just take it all for granted because like, well, this is what's supposed to happen. Then over time you realize just how lucky you are to have someone taking this much time to just support you into everything that they do to help you grow up, which is incredible. So I think it's now on us to help them help them by doing as much as we can to help them out currently, to kind of repay the favor, if anything like that.
I think also that it also depends on like also like even just any female in your family in general, because the majority of the time when I was growing up as a little kid, I was with my grandmother. My mother wasn't around that much, and I was around my mom a lot more throughout like my middle ages, like ages like 8 to 10, 8 to like 13, ever since then. So I think I learned a lot of appreciation just for women in general, family, what they do. Cause my grandmother did a lot, my mom did a lot, because there was a time it was just her there too. So I think I definitely, even as a kid, I always knew to appreciate. I definitely grew every time that I grew up, because I just learned how much harder it was just being them there. So.
Is there anyone else? No? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, like it's kind of the same as everyone else is saying. Just kind of like realizing like, you know, how hard like it really is to raise kids and also like balance like work. My mom, she didn't have like a regular job. Like my mom was a minister, like she worked at a church. But she was also like working like through the week and stuff like that. So she, you know, had to take care of like me and my brother, but also had to like, you know, work every weekend. Like just not like when you're a kid, yeah, you don't realize like how difficult it is. And then you get to an age where you're like, oh crap, like my mom really did like a lot and it was really hard. So yeah. And that's it. That's all I have.
Awesome. Good job, Maya.
Thanks.
Not easy doing the whole presentation online thing.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Okay, so I forgot at the beginning of class, so I'm going to have you do it now. I'm going to have you open Canvas. And go to March 30th, the family. Or I can share my screen so you can see, unless it would be easier if I didn't share my screen. Some of my students are having trouble working on their computers when I share my screen. But if you go to March 30th or the family, here's this activity, which I forgot to upload before class. But if you download that, that's the thing to complete during during class time today. So it looks like this. And I kind of wanted to start with the gender division of labor, which is something that Maya didn't mention. So that's awesome. That means I get to talk about it. Yesterday was last Thursday was all about women at work. And today is all about what we kind of traditionally think of as like quote unquote women's work and how that needs to change / the family. It was kind of hard to, it was a little hard to talk about. I felt like yesterday or Thursday's class and today's class were kind of bleeding into each other in terms of like topic. Anyway, so the gender division of labor is when women perform unpaid care work within the home and men are salaried or wage earning breadwinners. And in the standard North American family unit, women can work, but they still basically do this. Do you guys think it still exists?
I think probably
less so.
Sorry.
I think it less so than it used to, but it's still there for sure. I think it is getting better though, in my opinion.
I think a difference with this is that on top of like doing the care work now, a lot of the time women do have like part-time jobs or full-time jobs and then are like required to like do the care on top of that, whereas men are still just like working outside of the home mostly.
And so for Alicia, probably getting a little better, but still there.
Yeah, so like I would say it's like still there, but like not to like the extent it used to be where women like that was their one and only focus is taking care of the family. Like now there's like more outside as well.
Aren't more men becoming stay-at-home like dads too?
Yep. And so in a lot of ways, that role is kind of reversing. So I figured I would show you some statistics because in every class that I ever have, and where I kind of try to talk about the gender division of labor, there's always someone who's kind of like, yeah, no, men do their share now. Sounds like you guys are not as kind of going as far as that. So this is some numbers from the Pew Research Center. They were published in 2018. So they're a little out of date, only about a year or two. So this kind of shows us how work for mothers and fathers has changed since 1965 to 2011. So as Jay said, things are actually getting a lot better. But you can see here that mothers are getting paid way more. So it used to be like paid work was like 8 and now it's 21. And fathers are getting paid a little less. So as Ashley's point is, but then like housework, if you look, women used to do like this much housework and now they do this much housework, which is way better. And men used to do this work and now they do this work, which is again way better. But like if you look at it, women still do almost twice as much housework. And then as far as childcare, like if you look, this is really weird because women used to do 10 and men used to do 0.5 and now women do 14 and men do 7. So it's just a lot more time spent taking care of kids. And this was one of the things that people kind of realized is that childcare now, we just expect people to spend just way more time with their kids. And here is how this is for dual income. So that means mom's work and dad's work. So this is the number of hours spent each week. So usually women only work 31 hours a week, which is tricky because that's paid time or part-time work. So often comes without benefits. and sometimes has constantly changing hours, whereas fathers usually work 42 hours a week. Housework, it's getting better, but women still do more. Childcare again, but then all three combined shows you that like things are getting a lot more even. Women still do more, but not by much. It's just that like this bit, right? Men's work is still more paid. So people are working almost the same, but men's work is still paid. And then there's this thing that says most say women face a lot of pressure. And this says like this is a percentage of men and women face a lot of pressure to do each of the following. And it says women face a lot of pressure to be an involved parent, but the pressure on men is going up as well. This one is always a fun thing. Women also, and specifically mothers and parents, feel a lot of pressure to still be physically attractive. Men don't feel the same pressure, as you can see, 27 versus 71. But men are still more pressure to be successful in their careers, although women are making gains there, if you can call that gains, and support their family financially. Men are still kind of expected to be able to support their, or pressured to support their family financially. So I thought these findings were really good because they do show that things are changing, and things are becoming maybe more equitable and maybe not. For both moms and dads, more time is spent on childcare, and this was 1965, and this is 2016, and this is 1965, and this is 2016. So in 1965, women spent 10 hours on childcare, and now they spend 14. It just kind of blows my mind that in 1965, dads spent 2.5 hours a week on childcare, and now they spend 8. So housework. This is really interesting. Do you think that the amount of housework has decreased? What do you think about the fact that used to be that people spent 36 hours on housework and now they spend, 28.
I mean, since both moms and dad are working, so it's going to be less people in the house, so it's going to be less housework. But once they're have a day free, then they start doing it. But I think because women started to work more, there's going to be less housework.
I'd love to believe that. It feels unending.
I feel like that now it's more common to have people to come in and complete your housework too, especially if both parents are working. They probably have somebody to come in and do the main cleaning or cut the lawn and things like that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Go ahead.
Or maybe the children is doing part of the housework also.
Oh, I'd love to believe that too. Not my children, but they can't even stand yet. So.
Housework is just ridiculous.
Was that?
I feel like they must have doing 32 hours of housework a week is ridiculous. I feel like they must have only done that much then because they weren't working at times.
Or societal expectations, but you were just kind of constantly doing it. So if you 1965, can you think about your grandmas? Because that's what I think about is my mom's stories about my grandma and all those things that she was obsessed with cleaning about. People were supposed to clean the toilet once a day. I know, right? Once a day.
What is this, at a restaurant?
No, at home. I know. And it's yeah, in a perfect world, you would do that. And you would wipe down the counters and you would wash the floors once a day. In a perfect world. And once you have kids, you realize that would be nice if you wash the floor every day, but you have to make sacrifices. Go ahead, Mike.
I think we also entertain a lot less than they used to. So we don't have as many people over our houses. And if we do, there's a lot less pressure to have it look perfect. And there's the expectation that, or there used to be the expectation that you're always home, why isn't your house clean? And now it's like, oh, you're working, it's understandable. You're a mom of 4, or you're a dad of 4, I should say, too, because like I grew up in a household where like my parents got divorced when I was like 10, and there was 4 children, so like it was constantly messy.
Yeah.
And both parents would be constantly cleaning, but they also worked full time, and my mom was going through nursing school, and like so it was just a whole different like expectation, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I remember too. It's like if moms are getting educated, that's a whole other thing, right? Mom's going back to school. I think I'll go to, I think Alicia's point is a really good one about we get more people coming in to help us with housework these days. And who are those women, or who are those people generally? I kind of gave it away, but like the people we get to come in. This is called, go ahead, Alicia.
Isn't it like generally like lower class, like women, like Latina women typically?
Women of color, women who are poor, sometimes immigrant women, sometimes women who occupy many of these intersectional identities, and they're always women, right? So when you, we call it, some economists, which I dabble in, really dabble in, not very good at, like, I'm not very expert in it at all, but they call this outsourcing your intimate labor. So like the idea is like certain labor is intimate labor, like caring for your children and taking care of your house, and sometimes even having sex with your husband. That's all intimate labor. And like women who are working and trying to balance all these things tend to outsource some of that stuff. So we send our kids to daycare instead of watching them. So we pay someone to do the intimate labor. And we have people come into our house to clean, and we pay meal services to make food. And then like there's this whole kind of underground economy on prostitution as well. So our intimate labor is a lot of times outsourced so that we can compete with men, but at the exploitation and disadvantage of more vulnerable women, right? Women of color who are poor and potentially also immigrants. And so in a lot of ways, and this is why the article about second and third wave feminism is like good, even though it didn't quite seem to fit with the rest of the readings. It's good to keep in mind because a lot of middle class, upwardly mobile white women have made gains in the workplace, have made economic gains, but in a way that sacrifices and exploits other women who have more intersectional identities. So that's kind of why I had all these together, even though it was definitely like not really clear. So let's see. Maya covered this stuff, the standard North American family. And she talked about this, how that kind of definition is a problem because it excludes all this stuff. But our laws and our policies are made with this assumption in place. And that's a real problem. This is the end of my slideshow because my intimate labor decided to assert itself. My kids interrupted me. But the price of motherhood is really an interesting article because I can show you my notes instead of my slideshow. It's just not as pretty or as nice looking. The Price of Motherhood is written by an economist. And let me just do that. The price, it's written by an economist, and this woman kind of adds up all the different ways that women pay economically or lose out economically when they have children. So as an economist, she starts off by saying like 2/3 of wealth is created by human skills, creativity, and enterprise, or what is known as human capital, and women literally produce. I mean, men help, but like women mostly produce the human capital, but they are then punished and exploited for it. So she says like, and like you guys can jump in at any time. But like women who stay at home to take care of their children don't make a salary, right? Andrew Yang had this whole idea of like making a universal basic income. You guys remember that? Do you know what that means? A universal basic income?
Yeah. So basically, it's based off of, I think it's anyone who's paying taxes gets a standard. I think his idea was like $1,000, or I know right now everyone's looking at the 12, but $1,000 every month to every taxpayer or dependent, and then also a certain amount of money for if you have kids and that sort of thing. Basically, it's so that you can have more money either to spend in the economy so that it's constantly flowing, or you save more money, or you pay off bills and you have less debt, that sort of stuff. Basically, so that you can spend more money.
Yeah, or at least that was how he spun it, right? And he thought that everyone should have a basic income, but there have been other kinds of ideas and policies floated that like if you choose to stay home with your kids, maybe the government should pay you for that, because the economy and the government and the nation is the one that ultimately benefits from you taking an investment and you raising educated and responsible and independent children. And so that does happen in other countries, but that does not happen here. And in a lot of Western countries, it doesn't happen. And so when women perhaps get divorced from the husbands who are the primary bread earners, what happens?
They don't have an income, and a lot of the time they probably still have to like rely on their partner giving them compensation, or they have to like go back to school to finish getting an education to be able to get a job to be able to support themselves.
Right. And also like usually at some point in divorce court, a judge gives alimony. Do you guys know what alimony is?
Yeah.
What is it?
Just money awarded, in this case, to the wife to help, like, just kind of cover her bills throughout the course of the next few years.
Yeah. And it's got kind of a bad rap, right? So when you take your spouse to divorce court and you've been a stay-at-home mom, you know, the judge decides how much you deserve, and it's never half, right? You are awarded, not that you earned, you're awarded a certain amount of your partner's paycheck, and that's usually because, like in the language of like the 50s, you grew accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And so like all of this rhetoric kind of shows how there's this assumption that caretaking and housework is not actually work, and that you should do it because that's what makes a woman, right? It's women are naturally kind of fulfilled by this kind of thing. And if you're not naturally fulfilled by this, then you must not be a decent woman, right? You're not a natural woman. There's something wrong with you. So like when women who are stay-at-home moms, they have no right to the income. So if a man wanted to, he could not share half his income. He could just give her an allowance. And then also in our tax system, they're economic dependents, which are the same as children. So in our tax system, stay-at-home mothers are treated as children. And that's some bullshit right there. And then there's alimony. Also, a stay-at-home mom does not get a pension or retirement or Social Security. If you hire a nanny to take care of your kids, legal nannies do get Social Security and unemployment insurance and stuff like that, or workman's compensation, but as a mother, you don't. And so that means that in your old age, women are twice as likely to be poor as men. And so women are really penalized for having children by the laws and policies that we have in our society. And it's really one other thing that I noted from the reading that just kind of blows my mind is the wage gap between mothers and childless women is larger than between men and women. So if the wage gap between men and women is that women make 80 cents for every man's dollar. A mother makes like not even a fraction of that. And that's for, and also a mom who stays at home who has been college educated, she'll lose more than $1 million over the course of her lifetime. So all of this is like really pretty crazy. It results in women working way more, but also being poorer. So even if like men and women are narrowing, and men are doing more of the household unpaid labor and women are doing more paid labor, it's still not evening out because women are still expected to do more unpaid, which then has results later in their Social Security and the amount of disposable income they'll have in their old age. I always assign this one because I just think it's just mind-blowing. What do you guys think?
Which one was it? I'm sorry.
Sorry, it's the price of motherhood one. So
I
if
think
you go ahead,
I-
Michael. Sorry.
I was just gonna say it's eye-opening. Like it's some stuff that you don't normally think of, and then it's like it changes how you perceive a lot of different things from your childhood or just life in general.
Yeah. So this also relates to the second shift. Do you remember what the second shift is?
Isn't the second shift like the women who work full time but then still go home and like take care of the kids and do all like the housework at night and things like that?
Yeah, it's their second job. And so Maya definitely alluded to this in her presentation, is that like women tend to work a second shift. And this is R.A. Hochschild, I guess, who did a study who found this. And she basically found that men and women who share the second shift have much more successful marriages in most ways than women who are not able to kind of count on their partners for this. Let's see. Let's see what else I had about the second shift. So I looked at.
I have something to add to that.
Yes, please.
So, like, one, like, I just like can think of an example as like my aunt. So she has 3 kids, and she doesn't have like a regular job, but my uncle does. So he like works obviously every day. And she like the kids, like they're all in school now. So she finally, because she's been like a stay-at-home mom since she had her first kid, which was, he's 8 now, I believe. So she's kind of been like a stay-at-home mom since then, but now she's like kind of like finally like getting back to work and stuff like that. And it's just kind of interesting how like I've seen the way that they like kind of have like their dynamic of like him doing like half of the work and her doing half of the work, so them kind of like you know, splitting that second shift like kind of 50-50. And I just thought it was like, it's just interesting to see how like how they make that work and how it's like it's very possible for families to have, for like a husband and wife to like kind of split that like time of like taking care of the kids and taking care of the house like 50-50. Like anytime I go there, it's not like just my aunt like cooking and cleaning. Like there's a lot of times where I go there and he's doing most of the cleaning and stuff like that. And I just think that like interesting how it has to be a thing that's like we have to like implement it instead of it just being something that comes naturally, because it's not that hard. Like it's really easy. So yeah.
Well, it's hard to be like, I would say it's probably hard to as a man to fight against that socialization in
Yeah.
your own mind. But yeah, like so it's like men need to, like, I don't know, look around and see what needs to be done, and then, you know, do it rather than kind of waiting to be told, right? Which is like the mental load, and need to, you know, take part in buying some of the kids' clothes and know what sizes they are, which means getting them dressed in the morning, and know what their prescriptions are, and which means, you know, attending some of the doctor's appointments and stuff like that. The one thing that I did, now I remember I was going to talk about from the second shift, is she basically says that middle class jobs are making us work longer and longer. And I don't know, you guys are probably young for this, but you'll see this once you get out into the workforce. Like 40 hours a week is kind of, in America at least, it's the minimum. And really they expect you, in order to do a good job at your job, they really want you to work more like 50 or 60 or more. And, you know, working class jobs, that you're still capped at 40, but the wages are so low in working class jobs that people who work those jobs often need a second job. And so in America, with this, like, this kind of devotion to the almighty capitalism, people are being expected to work more and more and more. But that doesn't change how much work is required at home with child rearing and housework, right? And so it's like almost like capitalism is designed to have one person making money and one person doing all of this unpaid labor, all of this caring labor. And capitalism and our conception of capitalism and jobs, you know, it just hasn't caught up with the fact that we expect, not only do we expect it, but for a lot of people, they have to have both parents working, or both parents working at least one job, if not more. And so when Maya asked about, like, what needs to be changed from our society, I would say it's not even just our society, but it's our economic organization of capitalism and working, especially because I don't know if you guys know any of the statistics about working, but 40 hours a week is like almost like psychologically impossible. Like, you get more out of your employees if you have them work more like 36 or 34 hours a week. But in America, that's not accepted. So it's just, so let's see. This is just recommended stuff. I wanted to show you a comic, and then let me see, a commercial. Let me see how if you look at your thing. So we talked about the second shift. We talked about the price of motherhood. So what is the relationship between the civil rights movement and the feminist movement? In a lot of ways, the civil rights movement gave birth to the feminist movement, but in a lot of ways, it also reproduced some of the problematic, you know, family structures. And Black feminist thought really wants people to understand intersectional identity. There's not a question here, but I was going to have you guys watch a commercial, and then kind of we'll talk about it, and you could write about it on the sheet too. Hold on, I gotta let's see if this works. All right, so if you can't hear this, let me know. Can you hear it? You can hear it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Excellent.
मुझे आपके घर जाने की टिकट. Hello, yeah, I'm just going to send you the email in 5 minutes. Yeah, give me 5 minutes. I'll copy of the present.
मेरी छोटी सी गुड़िया कितनी बड़ी हो गई, घर घर खेलती थी, अब घर संभालती है, ऑफिस संभालती है. आई एम सो प्राउड एंड आई एम सो सॉरी. सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है. सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं. ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं है, तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है. पर कहता भी कैसे है. और मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धो देना. मैंने भी तो कभी तुम्हारी मम्मी की हेल्प नहीं की, और तुमने जो देखा वही सीखा. तुम्हारे हस्बैंड ने भी बचपन में यही देखा होगा. घर घर खेलते वक्त वो टीवी देखने की या न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने की एक्टिंग करता होगा, और तुम जैसी कोई छोटी सी लड़की चाय बनाने की एक्टिंग करती होगी. उसके डैड की तरफ से, तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी. और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया. अभी भी देर नहीं हुई. इस सॉरी के साथ मैं अपनी तरफ से एक छोटी सी कोशिश करूंगा कि घर के काम में मम्मी की हेल्प करूं. किचन का किंग ना बन पाऊं तो कम से कम लॉन्ड्री में तो हाथ बटाऊं. इतने साल एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है, अब कुछ सही कर जाऊं. तुम्हारा पापा.
I woke up early, clocked in. My boss was like,
What did you guys think?
It was powerful.
Yeah.
What is that commercials from India or something?
I think it's from India, yeah.
Yeah. Other country has really good deep commercial.
I think it's a laundry company owned by I think American company. I mean, look, I think it's old. It's like from 2016. Share the load. Yeah, it's from P&G. So like, even though like we don't have that particular brand of stuff. What am I doing here? Particular brand of laundry detergent. P&G is an American company. So Americans were involved in this particular thing. What do you think other than that?
I think that like using it as like a laundry detergent to like kind of get the point across is like powerful, because like, yeah, maybe laundry's like not something that takes the most time, but it is like a simple place to like start to try and get people to like help out. Because if you tell like someone to go do all the cooking and they've never cooked a day in their life, that's going to be really intimidating. Or like cleaning the house. But something like laundry, it's like kind of you can learn to do it by yourself, but it also like doesn't take that long. And it's kind of just like one thing that like people can start at, maybe, to say.
And like it helps with the mental load if the mom doesn't have to worry about laundry always being done, if someone else can kind of monitor the situation of the laundry, like it can be useful, right? What else did you notice about this commercial?
I thought it was very inspiring, but it kind of bothered me that the father was just sitting there.
Yeah, right. He's watching he's sort of multitasking in that he's working on his laptop. I think he's supposed to be working, but also watching the game, right? But yeah, I totally agree.
Dad, like the
the other dad. Yeah. Yeah. Or observe. He's supposed to be observing, but yeah.
I also think it's like really true, like when he says like, oh, you must have learned like from your mom and then he learned this from his dad. And like if that's the house that you like grew up in, that's kind of just like how you think things should be, because like you learn from your parents. And if you've never seen your dad do anything like of that before, then why would you think that you have to, type of thing.
As a boy.
If you
Yeah.
just like see your mom doing it, you just assume that like that's what the woman can do and that they handle everything by themselves and they can do it all. But like if you saw both parents doing it, then you would understand that, yeah, it's a two-person job.
Yeah. So in some ways we have to like model. If we want to change things, we got to model the change we want to see, right? And get, you know, men to kind of model being different fathers. What else did you notice or observe from that video? Did you notice the mom seemed to be doing like 3 or 4 things at once?
And the mom's work just never stopped. Like she's always got something on. As soon as she gets home, on the phone, started cooking, pouring coffee, pouring tea, take the kid's shirt off, start washing that. It's just
And
like
picking up toys.
Yeah, this is a lot of stuff that I think many of us have probably observed in our own life growing up. Is that this is how it just actually was.
Yeah.
It's like a clear picture of like what the mental load is, basically. Like having to do like 15 things at once and like always running around the house. Like I remember like in the cartoon thing that we had to look at, the mental load like cartoon, like the lady said how she was like, oh, I would be like on my way to go like pick up, like to go like wash the dishes, and then I'd find like a piece of like clothes on the floor or something, and then I'd put that away, and then I'd find something out of place, so I'd fix that. And it was like just like different things that are like all happening at once. It's kind of like, you know, in the commercial how like the woman was like moving like really fast and just like doing a bunch of things, how like that's really like what the mental load is.
It's true. And like have you ever heard like people like say like, oh, women are just better at multitasking? Have you heard that? I used to hear that tons, that women are just better at multitasking. And like actually they've done studies on this, and women are not better at multitasking. In fact, multitasking is pretty hard, if not impossible, for everyone. And when you have to multitask, tasks just don't get done as well. But there's this perception in our society that multitasking is something that women are really good at, but men are really bad at. And this is all over TV. I remember it on like every sitcom, family-based sitcom I've ever seen. And it's just, it kind of shows that like this kind of socialization is really pernicious and ingrained and in ways that you don't even recognize. And if you're a woman and you're assumed to be good at multitasking, and so you are trying to take a conference call while also doing laundry and making dinner and picking up, then like it just means that none of it gets done as well, which also includes your career, which means that you're not promoted as quickly, you're considered to be more lazy and stuff like that. And so it's just, it's frustrating. It's everywhere. Yeah. So we've got like 3 minutes left. Let's see.
Leave early because I can't log into my my self-service to apply for classes, and it's in 3 minutes.
Is that Anne? You got to go?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it. Yep. I was just going to kind of talk about what's next for next class. So go ahead. So try to fill out the document that I've kind of included on today's, and submit that by midnight. And then for next class, it's about domestic violence. And so Lady is going to be presenting. And I think Megan also might present. So, but, you know, don't let that affect your presentation. Or Lady, if you want to get in touch with Megan, I'll email you both and you can split up the stuff if you want to. And I'll try to have the activity available sooner than I did today. Okay. Any last questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
The like list of questions on Canvas that's due by midnight tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. That's all.
But you should hopefully be able to do it now pretty quickly, since we've talked about most of them, and most of them are from the reading as well. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Anything else, you guys? Good luck with registering. If you want a minor in GDS, it's only 4 classes, and this is one of them. And Professor Smith is offering the African American experience next semester, which should be really good. And then I think in the spring I put in for, I don't know if this is accepted yet, but I put into Team Teach with Professor Jacobs, gender diversity in sports. So look for that next spring. Hopefully they'll give that to us. All right. So awesome job today, guys. Take care, and I'll see you later.